Hello, everyone. I'm Bren,
And I'm Jem.
and this is the Trunk2Tale podcast. And in this podcast, we're seeking to humanize healthcare through the sharing of people's.
And this week we've got the great pleasure of having my friend Phil, who lives two doors down. And I don't know how long I've known you for, Phil. It's probably 20 years by now, isn't it?
It must be around that time, yeah.
Phil is an ex-geography teacher and worked at a local comprehensive and has a huge amount of interest in the world in general. So it's always great fun to have a chat with him about what's going on here and there. But retired from teaching and took up a role as gardener and actually did our garden for us. So I'm declaring all my interests here. Anything happening back there in our garden is Phil's fault. Anyway, Phil, it's wonderful to have you on. And I know you've got a lot of interesting things to say. So we'll kick off with a question about what made you first think your mum might have dementia?
I think it was probably a gradual change in her sort of competencies, and particularly in conversation. I noticed that the same stories were coming up again and again. She couldn't remember that she told me these stories hundreds of times, and we're still at that stage today. If I go around for a cup of tea, see how she is, the same old stories will come out. So it's a broken record.
Yeah, just ask, when are those stories from? Are they very historical? Are they recent or a mix?
It's a mix. I mean, I suppose you could go back about 5 years, and then her entire life. She'll go back to childhood and tell me stories that obviously I've heard many, many times. And then it's the little things like doing the shopping. So she would go out shopping, and then when she's in the store, what did I come here for? What did I want to buy? And then she would buy things that she'd already got, she didn't need, and forget the things that she actually went out for. But she has developed a technique of making lists. So she'll make shopping lists, although the issue with that is she tends to have about 5 lists on the go with different items. And then she gets confused as to which shopping list she actually needs to take with her. So I keep an eye on that and, monitor how she's getting on. She's, she'll forget to do some basic cleaning. Cooking gradually went off the boil. So, she could easily cook for herself and shop for herself in that respect. Then forgetting how to use the microwave, forgetting how to use the hobs on the oven. Although strangely, she can still use the main oven. So she tends to have quite a few ready meals that she can just warm up. And then we supplement that with, Louise will cook her a meal, and we'll take that round. And then she has, I still call it Meals on Wheels once a week, just as an extra. But we can always increase that sort of service down the road if we need to.
Yeah. But just to fill in for the rest of you, Louise is his wife.
Yes.
She also lives two doors down. So that's
yeah, we're still in the same house, two doors down.
God knows how they've managed with each other, but anyway, that it seems on the face of it to be going well. So that thing about the cooker, I do wonder whether the technology of cooker has changed much less over the time than the microwaves. It might be just that things which are more historic are sort of better embedded, and I don't know whether that's anything to do with why she seems.
There's maybe 1 or 2 more gadgets on a cooker, isn't there? Timers and things, but the basic operator, she can set the temperature, she can set the fan cooker, and that's fine. But it's curious that she's forgotten how to use the hobs. So the dials, she's not matching up the dials to the right hob. Which, I mean, if she's forgotten how to do that, that's a good thing, because from a safety angle, I think that's more important that she can't use that than the oven.
And Phil, is she? Sorry to interrupt. Is she distressed at all by the fact that her memory is failing?
Interestingly enough, she still has a recognition that her mother went down the same road. And she'll say, "Well, I'm doing better than my mother was." She's got that awareness.
Yeah.
She's got that awareness of where she is. She's very accepting of it. She says, "Well, I know I get things mixed up, and I know I'm always making these lists, but she's accepting of it. She knows that things are changing, which is why I think it's early days in some respects. I mean, the fact that she can still, obviously I look after her shopping from a distance, so to speak, but I think it's amazing that she can still get on a bus and go into Beast and do a bit of shopping, come back again. That in itself is an activity that I think is keeping her going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's something she has to think about, and it just.
I sometimes will see her, won't I, out by the bus stop, by the retail park, and
yeah.
From what I can see, she seems to know who Caroline and I are. So it doesn't look as though she's forgetting people that much.
No, she recognises faces. She knows who people are, and she'll ask questions about people we know, like Louise's mum, for example. And she's really good at keeping a diary. I write things in her diary, but she'll write things in her diary as well. And she's using it every day just to aid herself in events that she's attending or organising a day. So,
how long, Phil, did you say since she had her first symptoms?
as I say, it's difficult to think back to any exact time, but because it's been gradual. But maybe 5 years, 6 years.
Wow, right. She's doing well.
Yeah, I mean, it was very, very small things at first. And as we all know, COVID definitely didn't help. But the fact that she's motivated to, I mean, she's a churchgoer, but that in itself motivates her to go out, and she's at the church 3 times a week for different activities, and that's a big plus in her life.
Yeah,
she's motivated to do it.
Yeah. So when was there an actual diagnosis, and how did that all happen?
I became a bit more concerned that she was getting more confused, so I made an appointment with the GP, and they gave her one of those tests, and there was some to you and I, some very, very simple, obvious questions or answers that she couldn't do. We then went off to the memory clinic in Stapleford, and they did another diagnosis. But the strange thing was, nothing happened for a long, long time. So I rang them back and said, "What's the next stage with any support, any help with my mum?" And they seem to have, lost her in the system.
Dear.
So we had to go back again through things, do the memory test again. And then we got another appointment, must be 6 months after that. And we were just sat in this lady's office in Stapleford. And she said, "So your mum's got Alzheimer's?" And I was like, "Pardon?" Excuse me. And the lady said, Have you not had any communication regarding her diagnosis? I said, "You're the first person that's told me my mum's got Alzheimer's." So she was taken aback. So there's obviously a miscommunication within their system.
So
she was taken aback by the fact that we didn't know she'd actually got an official diagnosis.
Wow. So she had 2 tests at the memory clinic a number of months apart.
Yeah.
And at some point, a diagnosis was made behind the scenes, which was not communicated to you. And at no point did she see a doctor, or is the doctor in the memory clinic?
The only time we saw the GP was right at the beginning to get the ball rolling. And then we saw 2 different mental health nurses. So she hasn't actually seen a doctor in terms of diagnosis of Alzheimer's. It seems to have happened based on conversations and these little memory tests.
And no scans of any kind?
I do beg your pardon. She did have a scan a couple of years ago. Everything was fine.
But that was before you saw, had the memory test, yeah.
Yeah, it was after the GP. I do apologise. It was after the GP.
Right.
But they said there's nothing untoward given her age going on.
Wow. That's extraordinary that you could diagnose Alzheimer's based on, wow.
Yeah, we'll have to pick up on that with the point, because on the face of it, there's a million sorts of dementia. A memory test would be common probably to all of them. How they diagnose a specific form,
disease,
a specific disease from a memory test seems, of course, Well, it's the predominant form of dementia. So if you were going to hazard a guess, then that's what you'd guess, isn't it? Yeah. It just seems a little bit. Anyway, that's. I mean, it's got to put it in our notes for us to follow up on the question about how.
It may be that I'm misinformed. It may be that I've forgotten what I was told years ago. I wouldn't.
No. So,
I just wonder if I'm communicating here.
Yeah.
Well, it's
about our stories, and this is how you remember your story of what happened. It's none of us got a perfect memory, have we? So we're all in that boat of sort of making stuff up as we go along about what happened.
But whatever procedures took place, we definitely weren't told she got Alzheimer's.
No. Wow.
This lady just assumed that we'd already been given the diagnosis.
Was your mum in the room with you
Yes,
when you said that? It was just you and your mum and the doctor?
And the nurse, yeah.
The nurse, okay. And how did your mum react?
She was fine, to be honest. She wasn't, shocked or dismayed. There is a family history of Alzheimer's dementia. Both of her mum and her mum's sisters went down the same road. So I think my mum's a little bit sort of accepting in a way that this is the road ahead. But she's in many ways she's very, very positive because she is, physically, I would say she's very, very healthy.
Yeah. And if it's not too proddy a question, how are you feeling about that? Given it's a hereditary thing, and you're in that.
Well, it doesn't concern me personally, selfishly, because it's definitely a thing that's happening in the female line of the family.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be. I've not come across any past diagnosis of Alzheimer's dementia on the male side. That might be because they all turn up the clogs early, but
yeah, you don't know. Yeah.
The longevity on my dad's side seems short, so we haven't got to the dementia stage.
And how did you feel when you were there in the room and your mother was told she had Alzheimer's? I mean,
I was a bit shocked, simply on the basis of not the diagnosis in itself, but simply, hey, why weren't we told this formally?
Yeah.
In a better situation, in the right situation.
Yeah.
The nurse was clearly embarrassed because she obviously assumed that somebody had communicated the diagnosis to us.
Yes.
And then she was sort of falling all over herself, trying to make amends. She said, "Look, I'm going to report this to my supervisor. You do realise that now because you've got the diagnosis, you're entitled to carers allowances and other things kick in like council tax reductions and so on."
Right.
But she said, you should have had that months ago.
Yeah.
But they were good in that they said, we'll tell the department for whatever it is that this needs to be backdated to something like September. I think it was December of where are we? 2023 when she got the diagnosis officially, but they knew back in September time.
Right.
Can I just ask if you're allowed to talk about this? Because, of course, Louise and Jan will have gone through something like a similar process.
Same process. Exactly the same.
Did it work better for them? Or do you think, no, I'm not an isolated case. This is happening to a lot of people. Something somewhat similar, at least, is happening to a lot of people. Or, it's very patchy, the way in which this all happens. So I don't know if you've got any sense of whether this was particularly bad for your mum or whether, no, this is part of the course.
I just felt there was a lack of communication going on, but it didn't seem to happen in Louise's mum's case.
Okay, that's good.
That was GP, and then immediately they said, because dementia, Alzheimer's is different for different people. The symptoms that Jan has, not the same, very different to my mum. And she seemed to be, I don't know, rushed through, that's maybe the wrong words. But we got a brain scan quite quickly. And then Louise's mum had a fall and hurt her head. And there was some sort of connection between how quickly the Alzheimer's kicked in and the fall that she'd had. And there's some connection there.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the sorts of care that your mum gets as a result of the diagnosis. Can you just expand a little bit on that and give us a sort of feel for what you think about how that all works and how much you as a carer have to input into that, and were there no Phil, what would it be like for your mum if there wasn't a person like you? So I'm just interested in how all that.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't get any other care apart from me. Although we've now, well, sorry, I should say she now has a cleaner, but that's a private arrangement, not
Right.
through social services. We decided at this stage that she hasn't yet had a social services assessment in the home because between us, she's managing. The fact that she can still get out and about using the buses, still I look after all of the household management side. She can't do that, and I've got taken out power of attorney on that basis. But yeah, it tends to be me popping over 3 times a week, just making sure everything's okay, and chasing up any admin that needs doing. Yeah, if I wasn't there, I'd be worried because she just needs checking on. Somebody calling in, is everything okay? Is everything running smoothly? Is there somebody able to look after her affairs? So yeah, if I wasn't there, who would pick that up?
Yeah.
You were sorry, Phil, you were an only child, or was a
Yeah, I am.
right,
Yeah.
right. So the burden really does fall. Well, burden might be the wrong word, but the care falls entirely on you at this stage.
At this stage,
yes.
I wouldn't say it's an issue beyond. It's just something not sure, an errand I have to do.
Yeah. Yes.
The fact that my mum's happy, content, she's still getting on with her life as it is. Things are fine at the moment. But yes,
Yeah.
so we would need some sort of external support if I lived, 50
Yeah.
miles away.
And how long has she lived in the area that she's now living in?
10 years. About 10 years.
Okay. So she can still remember how to get the bus. It's not like a childhood area where she grew up getting the bus into the city, or it's relatively recent, really.
Yeah, I mean, she was in Cumbria for 36 years, and then
Right.
my dad passed away in 2004.
Right.
And then she made the decision to move down here about 10 years ago.
Right.
So, and it was a big thing.
Yeah.
She got, loads of friends in Ulverston in Cumbria. But she while she's just said to herself, well, while I can still do this before I get older, essentially, I'm gonna bite the bullet and move down nearer to me.
Phil, we just had a think. If you can sit a bit stiller, you're moving in and out of the screen, so you're obviously one of those twitchy folk who you move it. It looks all right to me, but I think from Katie's point of view, you're moving in and out of the shot a little bit. So is that okay? Thanks.
Yeah. I'll freeze.
Yeah.
For the viewer's sake, yeah. The reason I asked you that, Phil, because you said she was getting the bus, and it's quite impressive actually that someone with Alzheimer's who's only lived in this area for 10 years can still get on the bus, because I think usually it's when you've got a very, very deep-rooted memory of a place that you're able to function in that way. So it seems to me your mum is doing remarkably well.
I think it's down to her making that big decision early, before any sort of deterioration in health came in.
Right.
So when she moved down here, she then engaged herself in the local community. So she went to the ladies' club, obviously joined the church in Beeston. She was going to some sort of keep fit class when she came down here. She would, walk around the area quite a lot. So the other advantage was she knew the area already because her sister used to live in Chilwell. So when I was a kid, we used to travel over from Manchester to see my auntie Kath in Chilwell, and that went on for a number of years. So my mum did know the area before she moved down here.
Right.
Which was obviously something that affected her decision.
Yes, that might help.
She wasn't going to somewhere totally new, which fits in with what you were saying, in that she did have familiarity with the area already.
Yeah.
Just about your extended family, because of course you've got a son. How did they react? How did they feel about what had happened to their grandma?
I mean, no big upset really. Obviously sorry for her in some respects, but I think they just see it as a process of aging. She's 88, and these things happen. Is the way they've looked at it. So no real upset. I mean, partly. Part that's because my son, you could argue, is not that close to his grandma because we were living in Nottingham. Grandma was up in Cumbria, so the frequency of visits wasn't that often. So he didn't have the opportunity to get close to his grandparents. Maybe like people who've got relatives close by.
And does your mum, Phil? Does she? You said she's 88. Does she use modern tech? Does she use a mobile phone?
She doesn't really use a mobile phone anymore. She's sort of forgotten how to use it.
Right.
So she's got one, but that's the thing about my mum, is she's very resistant to technology. I think she, even though she's very positive and motivated, if she comes across difficulties, she'll soon give up. But that's not an Alzheimer's thing. She's always like, oh, I can't be doing with this. I can't be doing with this. So particularly technology. But I think if she was using technology that was very, very accessible, I think she would go with it. And it's about instruction, isn't it? Somebody having being able to show you the way through, and then repetition. If the technology, let's say an iPad type thing, was what she was using, if there was sort of a repetition there, and also if she could see a real benefit of it. So technology is great if the benefit to the user is really obvious, especially maybe
Do you telephone her, Phil?
No, I tend to pop round. Or I'll ring her and say, "Mum, just popping round," because we're literally 3 minutes up the road.
So she does answer the mobile or the landline?
She, having just said that she doesn't use a mobile phone, she sometimes rings me on the mobile, and yeah, but I tend to ring her on the landline. I ring on the landline because I know she'll definitely be able to use that.
The reason I say that was I used to call my dad on his iPad using an app called Viber, because the iPad would answer automatically. He didn't have to touch it.
Oh, right.
So your mum isn't at that stage of obviously, needing that sort of assistance. But yeah, there are still one or two ways you can contact someone by phone or iPad if they don't have the ability to respond directly to the ringtone themselves.
Right. I mean, I've a while ago I got her an Echo, Amazon Echo.
Yes.
So that she could easily sort of use the radio or play music that she likes. And then I suggested, maybe we could talk to each other using Alexa. And she said, I can't be doing that. No, I'm not doing that. And then on top of that, I didn't know how to set it up. So that didn't go anywhere. So whether we pick that up again in the future, I don't know.
Right, yeah. You said that you tried to talk to her through the Echo. I've not come across anyone else doing that.
Well, we
know that,
Jem. Mum, the Alexa will allow you to have me to call her on through Alexa, and it will pick up her end, but we don't do it. My mum, when I've been to visit my mum, this is the most ridiculous thing. She says, I need a clock there so I can see it. I said, Mum, ask Alexa what the time is. Alexa will tell you the time, to say what's the time.
Not the same.
No, she wants the clock, and the thing is, it's habits of a lifetime, isn't it? Are just so hard to. I don't know if break's the right word. And then, of course, you look to yourself and you realise you're just the same about other things, but all of these things are sort of doable, and that's one of the sort of the frustrations from as people trying to get technology out there, is that if you're pushing into somewhere where people's patterns of behaviour are already well established, you've got God's own sort of effort, haven't you, to make them do something else, because I can't see why. And that is what you say, Phil, is if there's not some really obvious benefit, a sort of eureka moment, then nothing. But it sounds like, I mean, we're coming up to the end of the half an hour now, aren't we? And one of the things is about, we try to be optimistic. You know, what is there something that obviously there's lots of downsides to this. Any joy you can take, or anything you've learned which you go, you know what, from the whole experience, what have you got some optimism for the future?
What, in terms of my mother?
Yes, it could be in terms of your mum, or it could be in terms of, you know, things that you've come to understand about things because of what's happened to your mum. You know, you're a lifelong learner, aren't you?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
what have you learned?
I think maybe the optimism is, given that we're in a generation where we're used to technology, and the sort of things that you would like to think would benefit people now through technology. Maybe that's going to kick in when the current generation moves forward into that age group, because we don't have this fear of technology or feeling embarrassed by not being able to use it, although I still do.
It's true. And also our generation, well, Elon Musk might design something for us. I mean, he'll be old one day, won't he? So it will matter.
Yeah.
You know, it's things like that. It's not sexy always to be designing for people with Alzheimer's.
No. But, you know, the thing I notice about elderly people is that they sort of like familiarity. They like things they already know, and they like the coziness of their own homes. I'm always a little bit intrigued that people reach a point where, you know, maybe in early retirement they want to travel the world, and then all of a sudden they seem to be just happy in their own home and garden, and they're not too worried about extending their boundaries anymore.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, if Alexa could actually be the clock on the wall, your mum might talk to Alexa, if that makes sense.
That's right.
You know what I mean? If it was the clock on the wall and she talked to Alexa, you know, it's that sort of thing. Hide it behind something that she's familiar with. Anyway, no one's going to use that today. So
That's probably a wrap, Phil. So look, thanks, mate. Thanks for coming up. We'll pick up that game of snooker sometime, perhaps, as well.
Yeah, I need to get more practicing because you're too good for me.
Oh yeah, right.
Thank you, Phil.
Yes,
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
It's been interesting, fascinating. Thank you.
Good.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.